Hey guys, welcome back to Heart Breathings. Today we are going to talk about 5 tips for how to write more in 2022. So let's get started. Okay, before we start on the content, I just wanted to say a quick thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for 50,000 subscribers. I just am blown away and so incredibly grateful for each of you. So thank you for that. I definitely want to celebrate. So let me know in the comments what you'd love to see as a thank you and a celebration. We're definitely going to do some giveaways, but I was also thinking maybe a live coffee chat or a Q&A here. Let me know in the comments. I don't know about you. Over the last couple of years, it has been a little bit more of a struggle to find my creative well and to really get immersed in the story. I have written a few books, but they have been harder for me to write. Part of that is because I have a toddler at home, I know, but another part of it is just the global situation that we find ourselves in and just a little bit of extra stress. So as we moved into 2022, I started thinking, how can I find more creativity and more joy in my writing? Because I really, really miss the way that it feels when words are flowing. And it's just been more difficult to get to that point of flow. So here are the things that I'm trying. Tip number 1 is to read more books. And yes, I know we're talking about writing, but this is probably a tip that you've heard before, that the more you read, especially if you're reading things that really light your imagination, it doesn't even have to be the same exact genre that you write in, but it just gives you like the gift of seeing another writer's creative spark and being able to say, oh my gosh, this is why I love stories. And if you can find those books that make you fall in love with storytelling and story worlds again, it's just naturally going to ignite that spark for you to tell your own stories. So find the time, make the time to read more books. For some of you though, it could be other things too, like playing more video games, because there are some really great stories in video games these days, or watching more fun TV or TV that really sparks your imagination, movies, things like that. But just consume more. So often we're focused on doing. And I know for me, it has been helping me just over the last couple of weeks to just sit back and enjoy other people's storytelling more, so that it brings back that kind of feeling that I'm ready to be creative. So read more books, watch more movies, play more video games, but find more time to refill that creative well inside yourself by consuming other stories. Tip number 2 is stop trying to be like everyone else. And I could also word this by saying, like, stop trying to be the writer you feel you should be and just be the writer that you are. I feel like it has been a thing in the writing community for decades that people will tell you that in order to be a professional writer, you need to sit down at this time, get your butt in the chair, and sit down and write. And while there is wisdom in this, I think that sometimes that is said because that's what works for some people, especially when you're traditionally published and you're writing on specific deadlines and you've got these, this habit of writing. But I also do feel that not everybody is cut out like that, where we want to sit down at 9 a.m. and have this exact routine. And for years and years, I have tried to fit myself into that mold of how I feel like I should be, even though I knew that my best writing came in a different form. It looked different than what I thought it should look. So instead of embracing my natural joy of liking to go away on writing retreats or kind of immerse myself in my own little room for an entire weekend and just write like 10,000, 20,000 words over the course of a week or a weekend, I tried instead to be the kind of person that sits down at the desk every morning and writes that 1,000 words a day. And it just never really has clicked for me. I have always ended up, no matter what kind of schedule I tried to set myself in, with binge writing habits where it would be like, okay, now the story has come to me. I'll marinate over the ideas. I'll let them soak in. I'll let them play for a while in my brain, sometimes even for months at a time, writing things on note cards, getting ideas down. And that is fun for me. And then once something clicks, I kind of always, you may have heard me explain this before, like, you're opening one of those like safes that you can kind of hear it click like old-fashioned bank robber, And once that last little tumbler falls into place and you hear it click, it's like the story opens for me. And I just want to crawl inside of it and be consumed by it. And so that to me never really comes from daily sitting down and writing this many words. Instead, it comes from immersing myself in joy, playing with story, talking through the story, sometimes for weeks. And then once that moment clicks and the story comes together, being able to kind of step aside from everything else and just immerse myself in the story. That is not what it typically looks like or what you hear most writers say as their process. But I think there's more of us that binge write than we admit because it doesn't sound as professional. So my tip number 2 for you is just to lean into your own personal strengths and your own personal joy. That doesn't mean avoid writing. It simply means that if you're not the kind of person who likes to have that routine of sitting down every single day and getting your words in, and you find it more productive to write in a different way, then try for a year to stop beating yourself up over who you're not and just embrace who you are and see what happens. Tip number 3 is to write books that really excite you. Now, this one comes with a little bit of a warning, which we'll talk about a little bit. But first, I'll just say, again, it's that should that sometimes we as writers, especially if we're trying to get published and get our work out there. Sometimes, in the trad pub arena, you'll have people that say, well, nobody's buying that right now. So you can't write this, you have to write this other thing. Or like nobody's buying this genre that you love, so you can't write that anymore. And you'll hear the same thing in indie publishing that people will say, oh, well, that genre is dead. Nobody buys that, but you could write this other thing. And a lot of times that inspires us or influences us to drop the kinds of books that we love and instead write something that doesn't really make us passionate. And a lot of times what that results in is the inability to really get anything on the page. Now, I hope you understand that I'm saying this with no judgment because the market is a very real thing. And sometimes to pay the bills, we just have to do what we have to do. So there's no judgment there. But if you are in a position where you can, write what lights you up. What George always said to me from the very beginning of deciding to write at all was he said, just write what you love and we'll figure out a way to make money on it. And so far that has actually worked for me. Where the double-edged sword comes in is that sometimes in my past, and maybe you can comment if this has felt familiar, if this seems familiar to you, is that I am deeper into a series and I'm just looking for that spark of something easier and new. And so then I'm like, oh, let me follow this plot bunny and this new spark of an idea. And so I'll write something unrelated while my series kind of languishes. If you take my Publish and Thrive course, which is coming up in February, you will hear me talk about this a little bit more, but it's probably one of the biggest mistakes I have made in my indie career is kind of jumping around to stories. So when I say write what excites you, it does come with that warning that if you're trying to build your career, it's not always a good idea to popcorn around and write a lot of different series and a lot of different genres, but within the strategy of what you're working on right now, in general, write stories that you love, the kind of stories that you want to read, the kind of stories that light you up. And if you want to write to market, then find the most marketable thing that will make you feel excited and passionate, and you're going to be well served by that. Okay, so tip number 4 is to work on your confidence. So we are going to talk about this more in some videos coming up, but I do think that a lot of times part of the reason that we don't write as much as we want to or as much as we were planning to is because there's something about it when we sit down, we start to get all these doubts. It's like all those little monsters come out, right? That start to tell you your story's no good. Look at this other person who has a story that's so similar to yours. You can't write this anymore. Look at all these other people that are finding this success. Your story's too small. It's too dumb. It's not flowing. There's a million like negative little thought bubbles that can pop into our head. For a while, I got into a really nasty habit of when I was writing, it was almost like I had this running negative dialogue happening in my head as the words were flowing onto the page. It would be like, well, that was the dumbest thing you ever wrote, or no one's going to want to read that, or that doesn't have the same like Sarra appeal as some of your other books. This one isn't going to do as well. And I really had to work very hard to shut down that voice. And one of the main ways that I started doing it was I started countering that voice in my actual manuscript. And I know this sounds like super crazy, but it really worked for me. Is I would hear that voice in my head and I would put an XX in the manuscript so that I would be able to see it in revisions and say, oh, that was just a thought, or that's something I need to tend to or take out of the thing. So I would put XX, and then I would just answer that voice in a way that felt more confident. So if the voice in my head would say, well, that's just stupid, that doesn't make any sense, I would say XX, and then I would type, I know it doesn't make sense right now, but I'm going to fix this in revisions and it's going to be great. And so it was kind of like the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. And I started just countering any of those negative thoughts. So the first thing was just becoming aware of them, the fact that I was kind of pushing my own confidence down when it came to writing. And the other side of that, besides the negative voices in my head, was comparing myself to other people. Is I would go on Instagram and see, oh my gosh, this person wrote 10,000 words today, or this person over here has a stack of books that's, mountain high and they're selling all these books, or they hit #1 over here. And that kind of stuff would really just pull the creativity out of my body because it was like always negative. What I have been able to do since then is anytime I see someone else succeeding, I immediately in my brain, I tell them, congratulations, you are paving the way for all of us who want to be in that position. And that has completely changed and turned around my comparisonitis. So now when I see someone succeeding and being #1, it just makes me think, oh my gosh, that means it's possible for any of us to do this. And I am so proud of you and excited because you are paving the way for all of us who want to be like you or want to find success that feels like that. And that just immediately takes it and makes me want to sit down and write rather than run away and hide in the closet. So working on your own confidence, this is a constant work in progress for me too. But if you have any other tips in the comments about how to work on your confidence as a writer, go ahead and share those. But I am going to have a full video on this coming up soon. But the main thing is to take your own thoughts and really spin them around and reframe it and start thinking of the reasons that you're excited, of how you actually are learning and you actually are improving and your writing is pretty darn good, and really recognizing those moments when the writing that comes out of you is just truly brilliant, and shutting down that negative voice when it tells you you're no good. Because the more confident you feel, the more excited you're going to be to sit down and keep writing. This can also mean to stop listening to the people who are telling you that you're no good. We all can benefit from critique partners or editors who help us create better stories, right? But it's not good to have people in your life, be it a spouse or a friend or a parent, who tells you, oh, what are you doing? You're never going to amount to anything. Just don't listen to those people. And if you can, try to not discuss your writing with them anymore. And instead, spend time with people who make you feel excited about how far you've come and about where your dreams may take you. Which leads me into the final tip for today, which is to prioritize your mental well-being. So we talk about this a lot in Publish and Thrive and here on this channel in general, but this has been like really driven home for me over the past 6 months as we've been on the road and trying to find a new place, and all the things that have been happening. It's like, I cannot be creative when my mental health is in a bad place. I don't feel the joy or the spark of like, let's create. And though I know there have been like historically like authors who have created great things from a place of depression and things like that, I think that really and truly for most of us, in order to create our best work, we have to be taking care of our mental health. So yeah, that means working on your confidence. It means not working yourself or pushing yourself beyond healthy boundaries. It means taking the time to read and fill the well and enjoy the people around you. It means cutting out negative behaviors as well as negative people who don't believe in your dreams. And it might mean different things for you. It might mean eating healthier foods. It might mean drinking more water, getting up and walking around a little bit more. I don't know what that looks like for you exactly, but I promise you that the more you prioritize and take care of your mental health and well-being, the more your writing will flourish. So that is definitely a priority for me this year as well. So those are my quick 5 tips for you. I hope that some of these resonate. Please feel free to leave some of your own tips down below for how you're planning to write more in 2022. And of course, sitting down to make a plan for yourself and actually following through with it is important as well. So we are going to have a 5-day follow-through challenge coming up in just a couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for more news on that. That's it for today. Thank you guys so much. Make sure that you are subscribed and hit that like button. I would so appreciate it. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.